Good morning, everyone. I am Riya Sinha, your SST teacher. Today, we are going to continue our chapter number 7 of civics, that is understanding marginalization. In the previous class, we have discussed about what does it mean to be socially marginalized. So basically, we learned that to be marginalized is to be forced to occupy the sides or fringes and does not be at the part or center of things. So, this is something that you all or we all have probably experienced in our society. In this chapter, further we have discussed about marginalized communities, in which we have discussed about Adivasis and marginalization. Then we came to know about a storyboard in which we have learned how Adivasi communities were displaced from their village and what kind of problems they used to face at that time. Then a question arises that who are Adivasis? In that topic, we learned that Adivasis are the term literally means original inhabitants or they are communities who lived and often continue to live in close association with forest. As we all know that around 8% of India's population is Adivasi and many of India's most important mining and industrial centers are located in Adivasi areas, that is Jamshedpur, Raulkela, Bokaro, Bhilai and among others. And these are not a homogeneous population, they are over 500 different Adivasis group in India. They practice a range of tribal religions and they are different from Islam, Hinduism, and Christianity. And these often involve the worship of ancestors, village, and nature spirits. And the last, that is nature spirit, associated with and residing in various sites in the landscape, that is mountain spirits, river spirits, animal spirits, etc. They have always been influenced by different surroundings, religions like Sat, Buddhist, Vaishnav, Bhakti, and Christianity. And simultaneously, Adivasi religions themselves have influenced dominant religions of the empire around them. For example, the Jagannath cult of Odisha and Shakti and Tantric tradition in Bengal and Assam. So they have their own languages and most of them radically different from and possibly as old as Sanskrit, which have often been deeply influenced the formation of mainstream Indian languages like Bengali. Santhali has the largest number of speakers and has a significant body of publications including magazines on the internet or e-zines. Now next topic we will continue Adivasis and stereotyping. See, in India, we usually showcase Adivasi communities in particular ways. Thus, during school functions or other official events or in books and movies, Adivasis are invariably portrayed in very stereotypical ways in colorful costumes, headgear, and through their dancing. Besides this, we seem to know very little about the realities of their lives. This often wrongly leads to people believing that they are exotic, primitive, and backward. Often, Adivasis are blamed for their lack of advancement as they are believed to be resistant to change or new ideas. So basically in India, whenever we used to showcase Adivasi community, so some of the things are there related to their community which officially in books or movies or in any event we used to portray it like that, like colorful costumes, headgears, and their dancing form. They used to dance in a different manner. Some basic steps are there which make it different from other dance forms. So this this often wrongly leads to people believing that they are exotic and primitive because uh, Adivasis never want to change, or they believe to be resistant to change or new ideas. So some people wrongly leads that they are exotic, primitive and backward. Okay, so some of the group is there in our society who are having stereotypical thinking, and they used to discriminate against such groups. Okay, now next topic is Adivasis and development. How they used to develop, or how much they need to develop. See, as you have already read in your history textbook, forests were absolutely crucial to the development of all empires and settled civilizations in India. So, metal ores like iron and copper, and gold and silver, coal and diamonds, invaluable timber, most medicinal herbs, and animal products like wax, lac, honey, and animals themselves, elephants, the mainstay of imperial armies, all came from the forest. So, in addition, the continuation of life depended heavily on forest that help recharge many of India's rivers, and as is becoming clearer now, crucial to the availability and quality of our air and water. So basically, we came to know that they are very crucial about development of all the empires, and we need forest for the development or for any settled civilization in India. So metal ores like iron and copper, gold, silver, diamond, medicinal herbs and animals all came from the forest. So in addition, the continuation of life depended heavily on forest, and that helped recharge many of India's rivers, and is becoming clearer that it is crucial to the availability and quality of our air and water. So forest covered the major part of our country till the 19th century, and the Adivasis had a deep knowledge of or access to, as well as control over most of these vast tracts, at least till the middle of the 19th century. And this meant that they were not ruled by large states and empires. Instead, often empires heavily depended on Adivasis for the crucial access to forest resources. So this is radically contrary to our image of Adivasi today as somewhat marginal and powerless communities. In the present colonial world, they were traditionally ranged hunter gatherers and nomads, and lived by shifting agriculture and also cultivating in one place. Although these remain for the past 200 years, Adivasis have been increasingly forced through economic changes, forest policies, and political force applied by the state and private industry to migrate, to live as workers in plantations, at construction sites, in industries, and as domestic workers. So, from the last past 200 years, Adivasis have been increasingly forced through economic changes and some of the forest policies, also political force. So, now they are also part of private industry. They used to migrate and live as workers in plantation, in construction site, and in the industries, and they also used to work as domestic workers. So for the first time in history, they do not control or have much direct access to the forest territories. Now they have to change their life pattern. Forests have been cleared for timber and to get land for agriculture and industry. Adivasis have also lived in areas that are rich in mineral and other natural resources. These are taken over for mining and other large industrial projects. Powerful forces have often colluded to take over tribal land, and much of the time the land is taken away forcefully and procedures are not followed. So, according to official figures, more than 50% of persons displaced due to mines and mining projects are tribals. Another recent survey report by organizations working among Adivasis shows that 79% of the persons displaced from the states of Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Jharkhand are tribals. Huge tracts of their land have been also gone under the water of hundreds of dams that have been built in independent India. Even in northeast their land remains highly militarized. India has 104 national parks covering 40,501 square kilometer and 543 wildlife sanctuaries covering 1,18,918 square kilometer. And these are areas where tribals originally lived but were evicted from. Yeah, they were forcefully evicted from their land so that all these government organization and wildlife sanctuaries were set up there. So when they continue to stay in these forests, they are termed encroachers. Losing their lands and access to the forest means that tribals lose their main sources of livelihood and food. Having gradually lost access to their traditional homelands, many Adivasis have migrated to cities in search of work where they are employed for very low wages in local industries or at building or construction sites. Basically, they have migrated to cities so that they can get another mode of livelihood or survival. Thus, they get caught in a cycle of poverty and deprivation. 45% of tribal groups in rural areas and 35% in urban areas live below the poverty line, and this leads to deprivation in other areas. Many tribal children are malnourished. Literacy rates among tribals are also very high. When Adivasis are displaced from their lands, they lose much more than a source of income. They lose their traditions and customs, a way of living and being. They took our farming land, they left some houses, they took the cremation ground, temple, well, and pond. So, how will they survive? Says Govinda Maran, who was displaced due to a refinery project in Odisha. Actually, when British officers were tried to make all the things or to develop all the things in a proper way, then they for that they need land. They needed land at that time, and because of that, because of the search of fruitful land, they had displaced Adivasi community from their own land. In fact, they have forced them to do so, and because of that, they have lost everything. And as you have read, there exists an interconnectedness between the economic and social dimension of tribal life. Destruction in one sphere naturally impacts the others. And often, this process of disposition and displacement can be painful and violent at the same time. Okay, so hope you all understood the cover topics well. In the next class, we will continue this chapter. Thank you and have a nice day. Okay, so let's continue the topic. Next one is minorities and marginalization. Already you all have learned that Constitution provides safeguards to religious and linguistic minorities as part of our fundamental rights. So the term minority is most commonly used to refer to communities that are numerically small in relation to the rest of the population. However,
It is a concept that goes well beyond numbers. It encompasses issues of power, access to resources, and a social and cultural dimension. Basically, the Indian constitution recognized that the culture of the majority influences the way in which society and government might express themselves. In such cases, size can be disadvantaged and lead to the marginalization of the relatively smaller communities. Thus, safeguards are needed to protect minority communities against the possibility of being culturally dominated by the majority. They also protect them against any discrimination and disadvantage that they may face. So basically, it is mentioned in the constitution that those who are less in number, they need our help, so to safeguards are needed and to protect minority communities against the possibility of being culturally dominated by the majority. These things were done. So they also protect them against any discrimination and disadvantage that they may face. Given certain conditions, communities that are small in number relative to the rest of the society may feel insecure about their lives, assets, and well being. This sense of insecurity may get accentuated if the relations between the minority and majority communities are fraught. So, the Constitution provides these safeguards because it is committed to protecting India's cultural diversity and promoting equality as well as justice. Every citizen of India can approach the court if they believe that their fundamental rights have been violated. Now, next topic, next marginalization, or we will try to understand in context of Muslim community. So, according to 2011 census, Muslims are 14.2% of India's population and are considered to be marginalized community in India today because in comparison to other communities, they have over the years been deprived of the benefits of socio-economic development. So, basically, the data indicates that Muslim community with regard to basic amenities, literacy and public employment need need help in developing their socio-economic status. So, recognizing that Muslims in India were lagging behind in terms of various development indicators, the government set up a high level committee in 2005, chaired by Justice Rajendar Sachar. You have to learn his name. The committee examined the social, economic, and educational status of the Muslim community in India. The report discusses in detail the marginalization of this community. Then it suggests that on a range of social, economic, and educational indicators, the situation of the Muslim community is comparable to that of other marginalized community like scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So, for example, according to the report of the average years of schooling for Muslim children between the ages of 7 to 16 is much lower than that of other socio religious communities. Economic and social marginalization experienced by Muslims has other dimension as well. Like other minorities, Muslim customs and practices are sometimes quite distinct from what is seen as the mainstream. Some, not all Muslims, may wear burqa, sport a long beard, wear a fez, and these became ways to identify all Muslims. And because of this, they tend to be identified differently, and some people think they are not like the rest of us. Often, this becomes an excuse to treat them unfairly and discriminate against them. But this social marginalization of Muslims in some instances has led to them migrating from places where they have lived, often leading to the ghettoization of the community, and sometimes this prejudice leads to hatred and violence. We saw how, in the case of the Muslim community, there is link between economic and social marginalization. And earlier we have discussed about the situation of Adivasis. So the experiences of all these groups point to the fact that marginalization is a complex phenomena requiring a variety of strategies, measures, and safeguards to redress this situation. And without these, we will never be able to protect the diversity that makes our country unique, nor realistic the state's commitment to promote equality for all. See the conclusion of this chapter. So basically in this chapter we have tried to understand what it means to be marginalized community. We have tried to look at this through the experiences of different marginalized communities. There are different reasons for each of these communities being marginalized. Each experiences marginalization in different ways. We have also seen the marginalization is linked to experiencing disadvantage, prejudice, and powerlessness. In India, there are several more marginalized communities like Dalits, of whom we will read in the next chapter. Marginalization results in having a low social status and not having equal access to education and other resources. Yet the lives of marginalized people can and do change. So, thus, no one is marginalized all the time in exactly the same way. If we go back to the two examples of marginalization we have discussed, we will see that each of these groups has a long history of struggle and resistance. Yet the lives of marginalized people can do change, thus, no one is marginalized all the time in exactly the same way. If we go back to the two examples of marginalization we have discussed, we will see that each of these groups has a long history of struggle and resistance. Marginalized communities want to maintain their cultural distinctiveness while having access to rights, development, and other opportunities. So basically, considered we consider them as marginalized, but it is seen in our history that no one can be ever marginalized if we will provide them better things or the ways through which they will come out from the current situation, then they will also become like us. So hope you all understood all the topics. Read the chapter carefully, try to understand it. Thank you. Have a nice day.